Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the first DLC released with Far Cry 5's Season Pass. This is called Hours of Darkness. It's a Vietnam-themed DLC that can be completed in 90 minutes or less, or it can take a lot longer depending on how many side quests and objectives you'd like to play. What's interesting about Far Cry 5's DLC is that instead of doing one massive DLC expansion, they're breaking it up into three smaller expansions. Hours of Darkness with the Vietnam theme, a zombie-themed DLC, and also a Martian-themed DLC. So they're getting a bit more crazy and wacky with the DLC, which is cool, but it is coming in more bite-sized chunks. Now, at the beginning of Hours of Darkness, you are sort of introduced to the setting through a comic book setup, a little bit of an animation there letting you know who you are, and that your helicopter, big surprise, has gone down in the jungle, and that everybody has been captured by the enemy. Luckily, you're able to escape through sheer luck, and now it's your mission to make it to an extraction point and also rescue your crew and complete various objectives along the way, should you choose to do so. Again, you can just make a beeline for the extraction point, but doing the side quests and the objectives is half the fun in the Far Cry games. Now, one really cool new gameplay feature that is introduced in Hours of Darkness are stealth perks. Basically, if you do silent takedowns without being detected, you will build up your perks on the right side of the screen. You can get up to 4 different perks that enhance your ability to detect enemies, be undetected by enemies, spot through cover. It basically gives you a huge amount of advantages if you choose to play very stealthily, which, makes sense for the Vietnam jungle at night. You can also go run and gun if you choose to do so. Whichever playstyle you want to play is totally up to you. But it's nice because since there's no monetary compensation for completing quests or objectives in a stealth mode, now you get actual combat compensation for it. You can be more effective playing stealthily than just going in Rambo if you choose to do so. So it's just a nice way to sort of incentivize the stealth gameplay and create a better balance, in my opinion. As Far Cry 5, I think I went Rambo for 90% of the game and had a fun time and just as easy a time of completing missions. I didn't see much of a reason to play it stealthy, but here I played quite a few more of the missions stealthily just because the perk system was pretty fun to use. Another cool option that you get is the ability to call in a napalm airstrike, where an F4 Phantom will fly overhead and basically blow up an entire base with fire everywhere. It's visually impressive, it's cool to do, but you do have to take down anti-aircraft guns in the region in order to get this ability, and so it's sort of the way of just blowing up a whole base if you really want to go in there and have the jet do most of the work for you. It usually won't get all the guys, but it is neat to watch the fire burning everything down. Now, that being said, the fidelity and visuals of this world just are not on the same level as Far Cry 5. Far Cry 5 is one of the most beautiful games I've played this year. It's unbelievable in terms of the fidelity and how much time they spent putting into the environment of this massive game world in the overall Far Cry 5 map. When it comes to Hours of Darkness, not only is the map smaller, but the destruction fidelity is less, the visual fidelity is less, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they chose to set most of the game at night, because the graphics really don't hold up very well, and if things are darker, it's easy to sort of not pay attention to the lack of texture detail or the world art detail. In fact, towards the end of the mission, when things start to brighten up a bit and you can see more, you'll notice that just the world does not look anywhere near as good as it does as the normal Far Cry 5 world. This is a little bit disappointing, as I think that one of the big appeals of Far Cry 5, aside from the fun exploration, is just the insane beauty of it. I spent so much time in Far Cry 5 just gawking at the vistas and the visuals, and Vietnam could certainly have similar style vistas and impressive visuals, but it's clear that this world just was not given the same amount of time and resources, even given its smaller size as the bigger Far Cry 5 map. So that's a little disappointing if you're coming directly over from the Far Cry 5 campaign to this. It does feel like a bit of a cheaper game. I think part of why I'm taking a more critical eye towards the visuals here is not only the comparison between this and the base game of Far Cry 5, but the fact that I've been playing a bunch of Rising Storm 2 lately, which is a multiplayer Vietnam-themed shooter, which runs on the Unreal Engine. It's more of an indie title, but that game has considerably better graphics than this, or at least more authentic and impressive looking visuals, where this sort of feels like they just sort of copy and pasted over a bunch of palm trees and some grass, and it doesn't really look like what I think Vietnam should look like, if that makes sense. Or it feels like sort of a cheap version of Vietnam without the same sort of visual references and the visual studies done to try and make it look more authentic. So that's just my opinion. I haven't personally been to Vietnam, but having played a lot of other Vietnam-themed games, I think a lot of other games have gotten the visual aesthetics a lot closer than they did in this game. Some of the highlights of playing through these missions are definitely the stealth mechanics, coming across small jungle outposts and being able to stealthily take out the enemy. Of course, getting the M60 machine gun and literally reenacting Rambo, clearing out bases, just taking people down is quite cool and definitely a highlight for me. Agent Orange is something that makes a bit of an appearance, much like the mechanic in the base game of Far Cry 5 with some of the flowers that emit that toxic chemical that makes your vision go blurry. Agent Orange has a similar effect on it, so it is kind of funny to see how they translated that mechanic from the base game into the Vietnam game, and instead of it being green gas, it's now orange gas, and you'll run into it from time to time. They also have tunnels underneath the map, so you can go down below in little huts and start clearing out some of the little foxholes in the tunnel networks that connect certain bases together and stuff. And that's kind of a cool experience too. Vehicle-wise, most of the game is just going to be played on foot, very much in theme of being sort of lost in the jungle at night. You gotta scavenge around on foot. There are some trucks, even trucks with mounted machine guns on the back, that you can drive around, and as you start to rescue the POWs, the guys who went down with your helicopter, they'll hop on with you and get in the gunner seat or the passenger seat. A bit of a twist with the AI this time around is that as you rescue your captured crew members, if they die in combat, then it's permadeath and they won't actually escape with you at the end of the game. So that's kind of an interesting twist on it. It would be cooler if your AI wasn't so stupid and got themselves killed in really dumb ways. Sometimes they look like they're kicking butt in combat and helping you out, and other times you're like, what are you doing? You're dying to like a boar in the jungle or something like that. So if you're used to the AI in Far Cry 5 base game, it's pretty much what you're going to get from this as well. Now, the enemy Viet Cong do have helicopters in this game as well that you can shoot down, much like you could in the normal Far Cry 5 base game. Unfortunately, these helicopters do not represent anything that the Viet Cong might have actually had during the war. In fact, you can tell that the helicopter model is just one of the copy and pasted helicopter models from the modern Far Cry game and doesn't represent a vehicle that would exist back then. If you're any sort of war buff, history buff, or at least even seen Vietnam films, you'll recognize pretty easily that a lot of the vehicles in this are just not authentic. Also, the game does not include one of the most iconic vehicles used in the Vietnam War, the Huey helicopter, which actually is used in the intro cutscene showing you guys flying in a Huey helicopter. The downed helicopter in the jungle, although it's dark and at nighttime and on fire, is not this Huey helicopter. They just used the Bell helicopters that were already in-game, put some green paint on them, and that's actually what comes to rescue at the end of the game as well. Technically, the OH-58 was in Vietnam, but realistically, the Huey helicopters would have been sent to pick you up from the rescue mission, and the fact that Ubisoft kind of cheaped out and didn't make the Hueys and just used what they already had in terms of in-game assets was a bit disappointing, especially since they made the F-4 Phantoms fly over and do bombing runs in-game. It's certainly a nitpicky criticism, but as someone who thought, oh, doing a Vietnam version of Far Cry 5 could be amazing, admittedly, I was a bit let down by this DLC. From the visual aspect, from the game world fidelity of destruction, to the story being pretty simple or very, very simplistic, straightforward. It's all got the same kind of liberating little camp mechanics, just with a lot less detail, a lot less characters along the way, and a lot less environmental diversity within it. The jungle pretty much looks the same from start to finish. So that part was a bit of a letdown for me. If you've played the heck out of Far Cry 5 single player, you've done everything in there, and you just need something that's similar but a bit different, then this should keep you entertained for a while. I hope the remaining DLCs have a little bit more fidelity and detail to them that makes it feel comparable to what the Far Cry 5 base game is. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you played the DLC, let me know what you think about it in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing out.